Hi, I'm Dr. Pascal Scoles, Professor of Behavioral Health and Human Services at Community College of Philadelphia and host of the Tapestry of Life show here at CCP TV. The opinions expressed in today's discussion reflect the experiences and struggles of 3 individuals and their process of incarceration and reintegration into the community. Their thoughts and reflections on the criminal justice system are expressions of the personal struggle they have to make sense of a system that they believe did not address their behavioral health challenges. Please note that one of the guests is dressed in a prison uniform and shackles. He is not currently incarcerated, but is wearing prison attire to help make his point. He is an individual who created a jail cell in the Huntington Park area of the city to emphasize the stigma of incarceration and the negative effect it has on reintegration into the community. The opinions expressed in today's discussion do not necessarily reflect any official position of Community College of Philadelphia. Thank you. Welcome to the Tapestry of Life. I am Pascal Scoles, Professor of Behavioral Health and Human Services at Community College of Philadelphia. Today's topic is incarcerated persons and behavioral health challenges. Most Americans would agree that violence and career criminals need to be locked up and for a long time. But research shows that prisons are housing too many individuals with behavioral health challenges who can be managed safely and held accountable in the community for far lower costs. Some of us in the behavioral health field believe that the prisons have become society's new state hospitals, housing significant nonviolent individuals in need of behavioral health care. To discuss this topic, we have Malik Aziz and Antoinette Jackson-Aziz and Mike O.G. Law Taban, who have experienced incarceration and its effect on their recovery. Let me start with O.G. Law. How's things going for you?
Well, right now, I'm living in a cell up there on 1924 Hunting Park Ave. I've been up there for 24 days now. I'm out here on writ to come see you.
Okay.
So that's basically what's taking place, just bringing awareness to the children about prison. So, instead of, waiting till they die, waiting till they go to jail, we bringing the jail to them so they can see it before they have to be it themselves and find out the hard way.
Okay. And you wanted to give them an experience of what it was like to
the whole experience. I mean, when I travel to come see you,
this is what it's like.
This is how you travel in prison.
Oh, okay.
So if this what you went to, then go on and commit a crime, and they definitely got one for you. Believe that. How much money did you just say they spent?
$29,000 a person.
So
that's a lot of money.
Yeah, they got enough money to buy one of these for you if you don't want to listen.
So why don't you explain what exactly you're doing? I think it's on Huntington Park Avenue, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, sir. 1924 Huntington Park Avenue. Yes,
okay.
sir. That's well, we built the prison cell in front of the Rest in Peace wall. When I say we, I'm talking about G-Law, Express Yourself music group. Over the years, we've heard a lot of people complaining about, nobody's saying nothing positive from the hood. So, we got some real OGs from the hood with some real stories who survived and lived to talk about it. And instead of trying to, get our money off of misinforming young people and make it seem like prison and death is cool, we chose the other route, man. We're going to use our experience to tell them it ain't cool. And for any entertainer who want to challenge us on a subject, we got our rap sheets.
Okay.
Bring yours.
I assume you spent time in prison because it's the nature of the show we're having today.
Yeah, approximately 14 years.
You did 14 years. Can you tell me a little bit about how you got to prison and what happened to you?
Well, kid, the same story everybody else got. Poor kid in the ghetto, no opportunity.
From Philadelphia?
From Philly.
Okay.
Want some money, fast. Everybody else around you getting it fast.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you got people who come to the community and tell you what you can be, but most of those people aren't successful, you know. And it's sad because this is how we know we need a better education system, because a lot of the people who are educated can't even get a job. So you got a little kid looking up at that saying, he drive a Benz.
Yeah.
You
sure.
work like a slave.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather, you know, take this route.
How old were you when you first went away?
When I first went away or
Yeah.
committed a crime?
Well, you were probably very young when you first committed a crime,
Yeah,
with like
yeah.
most of us.
I went away juvenile facility, Abraxas, when I was 15, 16, something like that.
And what was it for? I mean, was it?
Drug trafficking. I was taking drugs from Philadelphia out there through Reading to Pottsville and them little areas like that.
Okay.
It was just the drugs was worth more, whereas out in Philly, you'll sell a Nick Rock for $5. Out there, Nick Rock go for $20. So.
Can you explain what Nick Rock is to the audience?
Oh,
Some
Nick
people
Rock
might
is
not know.
a Nick Rock is a small piece of crack cocaine that's worth $5. A nick meaning nickel.
Yeah.
You know, so you know.
And you went through a succession, I guess, of experiences in the prison.
Oh, absolutely, man. I mean, I could tell you nightmares. I could tell you about things I've done and had to do to survive, and I can tell you things that was done to me when I first came through. You got to learn the hard way, like never go in somebody else's cell to fight.
Oh, okay.
I learned that the hard way.
Yeah.
Somebody was hiding under the blanket when I got in there and they jumped me.
Oh.
You know, and I could have got stabbed up, but somebody just happened to know me and was like, no, don't do the young boy like that, he all right.
Mm-hmm.
And because I fought back, they kind of respected, even though I lost.
And how old were you then when that happened?
I was in the county CFCF when they actually we broke the jail open back then. That was I was what 20, 21, something like that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the sad part about it is I've done time in so many different situations and states that I can't even really put it all together. It's just like a blur. I know where I was at, but I can't really
You can't do.
do a timeline, because one thing you learn when you do a long time is how not to count days.
Oh, okay.
No real convict does calendars and slashes and lines. They don't want to count days. You just kind of try to let them blur together. Sometimes you might eat some Benadryl to make you sleep 8-9 months away. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Anything to get rid of a day. You know what I mean? You don't celebrate holidays. Real convicts don't celebrate holidays because it's a letdown when the mailman walk past your door and don't slide that envelope under there.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't do none of that. You know what I mean?
I want to get back to your story in a minute.
Sure.
But how about, I mean, your experiences different, the same starting out, and, you know, we can kind of go back and forth around some of this.
Well, I didn't go to juvenile facility. I didn't get caught until I was in my 30s.
Oh.
So probably our life on the street might have been similar, but it just took me a long time to get caught. And I was incarcerated in Ohio.
Oh.
I was on my way home from California, and I got stopped in Ohio. So I was in a strange place that I had never been before for 4 years.
Mm.
And what did you get arrested for?
Possession of marijuana, large quantity,
When you say large quantity, what's
55 pounds.
well, that's pretty large.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, it only take 2.2 to be a felony. So
Yeah. And the interesting thing, I asked when I was arrested, why did they let me get all the way to Ohio? Because they didn't let me get home. I was on my way to Philadelphia. They said that Los Angeles didn't want any more marijuana cases. So Ohio picked it up.
And so you got 4 years.
Yes, mandatory.
And what was it like in Ohio?
Ohio has gangs, so there was gang activity, female gangs, which was new to me. Philadelphia didn't have female gangs at the time. A lot of most of the people there, females, were either there for murder or there for drug offenses, small-time drug offenses, usually crack users that got caught prostituting or buying small quantities of crack, possession of small quantities of crack. So I was unusual. It was a couple of us that were mules, as they refer to us, and then murderers and drug users.
Well, you know, if you look at the data, which I kind of initially introduced, you do get the impression that a large, significant population of people are really being housed in prisons that really are users or small-time drug dealers.
Yes.
I don't know how else you might want to say it.
That's
There's
right.
a lot of ways you could say it. But you wonder what is really happening in the prisons that could be helping people who are having all kinds of other issues around addiction or mental health. And I was wondering if you could maybe comment on some of that.
Maybe they should start giving out pharmaceutical degrees, and then they can sell all the drugs they want without getting in trouble.
What do you mean by that? I don't know.
Now, like you go to a drugstore
Uh-huh.
and you look at TV, it's drugs that they selling in the drugstore that do more damage than crack. They do more damage than weed. They do more damage than
You mean the over-the-counter stuff?
over-the-counter stuff. Don't use such and such and such if you have skin. Don't use such and such if you have hair. If your eyeballs fall out when you're using this, go straight to a physician immediately. Like, crack don't do that to people. Like, what they legally can sell drugs that'll hurt you, even if it say it fix something. And what a lot of people don't understand is why people use drugs. Well, drugs is medication. So it's obviously that you're dealing with people who dealing with pain.
Okay.
And if you got a toothache, you probably gonna go get some Ambisol. And then if you use Ambisol too many times, you're probably gonna have to up the dosage. And it's the same thing with crack. These people is dealing with a soul ache. They rather take themselves out of reality. You understand? So they're using a drug, a cheap drug, to make them feel better. That's what it is. Why did you get high? Because what? Because you
One
feel
better.
low,
Yeah, that's right.
right? So when
Well,
you
there
feel
was,
low,
I know on the street when I was doing a lot of treatment, in particular around cocaine and other drugs,
Right.
I know that a lot of people would use stimulants like cocaine or the amphetamines or methamphetamine as a mood stabilizer for them because they might have had a bipolar disorder or whatever, in the sense of a mental issue or a challenge, a mental health challenge, and that they were using street drugs a way to kind of help themselves out and medicate it. And eventually, what they don't realize, as we all know now, is that you get addicted to the substances, and
Yes.
then you start chasing after it, so to speak.
Absolutely.
But I think there is a group of them, and I don't know what the percentage is. There is a group of people who do start out trying to self-medicate.
Oh, yeah.
absolutely,
Yeah.
it's cheaper that way.
Yeah, alcohol.
Look at healthcare in America. It's cheaper that way. Like if you stressing out, how much it's gonna cost you to go to a doctor or a psychiatrist and deal with your issue, or it's a dude up the street that'll sell you a $5 bag of weed that'll make you feel
Yeah.
good for 3-4 hours. Which one you gonna take?
Yeah,
You know.
and if you don't have health insurance, which is a whole other issue, so I guess the quote the pharmacist or the street physician is up the street.
Illegal
Yeah.
pharmaceutical.
Yeah,
distributor.
yeah. I mean, you hear that a lot in the discussions of people on the street, and you also used to hear a lot of stories like a heroin addict who was on a methadone program, for example.
Right.
In order to get off, because methadone is more difficult to get off of than heroin on the street.
Exactly.
So what people used to do is to say, well, I'll go back shooting heroin. I'll buy heroin because it's easier to come off of heroin than it is to come off of the methadone.
Right. Yeah.
And
My
I know there are
father-
drugs in the
my father
prisons.
been through
I
that,
mean,
you're
right? I mean,
Oh,
I
definitely.
mean, I know this.
Yeah.
3 people died in Albion from drug overdoses in like a week's time from heroin. So it's
And when
there.
you were
Up Albion, SCI Albion,
Yeah.
a couple years back.
Malik, I don't want to actually ignore you in this discussion. So does any of this make sense to you?
It makes a lot of sense. Spent around exactly the same time he spent in prison, the 80s, early 80s, through the 90s.
What prison were you in? What was it?
I was actually 3 prisons, Graterford Prison,
Okay.
which is above Norristown, Pennsylvania. Dallas State Correctional Institution, Dallas was in Luzerne County, and Mononoy, which is one of the newer prisons that was built in the 90s.
Mononoy.
Mononoy, right. State
Yeah.
Correctional Institution, actually it's Mononoy.
Mononoy?
Right. Mononoy.
Now, were you in there for the 3 experiences you've had in prison? Were they all for the same kinds of activities?
drug-related crimes, right? Trafficking, state level.
Mhm.
Just to talk a little bit about prison. The prison is like a little city inside. You had the guards here to control, open the doors and close them, and conduct the flow of inmates through the hallways and run the lines to work, chow,
Mhm.
and those kinds of recreation. Then you have the administrative staff, which is in the administrative building. That entails the warden, the deputy warden, the unit managers, and those kind of things. And then you have the inmates who are housed there for whatever time they housed there. It's not too complex. You have the inmates have their rules, and the guards have their rules, and the administration have their rules. But there's supposed to be one rule of prison, and that is to obey the laws at all times and move when somebody tell you to move. Sometimes there's conflict with that, but most of the time it runs smooth in prison. For me, I never had a problem in prison. I went through all those years without misconduct. Misconduct is a write-up. It's something that when you break, when you don't follow rules, you get infraction. They give you a misconduct. But I never had one of them.
Wow, I had like 50 of them. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, they used to call me fair convict in jail, but I was like a stand-up guy.
Fair convict.
Yeah, that's what they called me, because I was always checking them, standing up for my rights.
Right.
Well, what kind of infraction?
And I didn't know how to, see, he was also good in the law library. I didn't know how to fight with paperwork. All I know is, you ain't supposed to treat me like this. How you gonna use criminal behavior to fix a criminal and expect me to go out back in society and be good? So, I mean, good, evil plus evil will never equal good. So I stood up and I paid for it, man. I'm months in the hole. That's when you go RHU, restricted housing unit. When you're a hardhead, they put you in jail inside of a jail. And anything can happen to you in there. I mean, you know, all I'm gonna say is, sometimes when mamas get that phone call that their child hung themselves, you gotta understand something. 13th Amendment says slavery and mortal servitude is illegal except when you're duly convicted. So when you're duly convicted, you become a slave. So ask yourself, these is the exact same chains they used to use for slaves, first of all. These is real. Well, what they used to do to slaves when they got out of line? They used to hang them. So every time you hear somebody got hung in prison, that don't necessarily mean they hung themselves. That's all I'm gonna say.
Sometimes you're saying that it isn't a suicidal issue.
No,
it's just
what's the
things
first
that
question
happen.
they ask you when you get to Greater Fort?
Where you want your body shipped?
Where you want your body shipped? That's the first thing they ask you when you
First
get to
thing they
Greater
ask you when you get there. When you go inside the prison, they want to know where you want your body, because there's no guarantee you're gonna come out alive.
And that don't mean that another inmate is gonna kill you.
Well, I assume there is inmate violence going on, at least characteristically we hear that. I mean, you all have experiences, so you could probably tell me more about what's going on inside the prison than, you know, I see on TV, for example.
Well, it's the violence that is the same on the street. Sometimes, believe it or not, in prison, there be fights over boyfriends and girlfriends, right? There's a lot of homosexuality in prison, right? So you have those kind of fights.
I mean, why wouldn't it be when they took out all the porno magazines and?
Right. Well,
I'm not justifying it, because if it's in you, it's in you to me. If it ain't, it ain't.
Right.
But to take a grown, if you're not in there for a sex offense, to take porn away from somebody that can't see their woman for 10 years, that's almost like promoting it. In the county, they give you condoms. So that's like telling them,
right.
You know what it is. Ain't no girls in here, but then you got the boys that take the M&Ms and dip them in warm water and put the lipstick on and eyeshadow and all that. Like they.
Yeah, it's a sad state inside of a prison, because when you confined, not only are you physically confined, but you also become mentally confined. So you have to find ways while you're in prison to keep at least your mental state free. And I was able to do that by taking a job in the library. I was a librarian, and I also was a law library clerk. And you call them jailhouse lawyer or whatever you call them. But that way I was able to have access to books, to read all the time, have access to conversation with all kind of people. And so that was the kind of way that I did my bit. And when I say do my bit, that's doing your time. Right. And because I had a little status from the street, going into the prison. And that's that little status that I was always like a organizer in the community. As a young person, I belonged to a street gang in Brewery Town in Abbotsford Homes.
Near the project? Near the project?
Right in the project.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right. Even though I was from Roxborough, my father was a bus driver. He drove PTC. That's what it was called then. And he had a girl. And he had a girlfriend in Abbotsford Homes. And I got real close with her sons, and we grew up together. And I was like their brother. And that's how I got connected over there to Abbotsford. And we all belonged to the same gang.
Well, I knew Abbotsford because I lived in North Philadelphia, and we used to come up to where Pep Boys is now, if you know, and over. And you were coming down from Roxborough into Abbotsford.
Right, into Abbotsford. Well, yeah. That's where I hung. I lived in Roxborough, but I hung in Abbotsford. And the thing of the matter is, if you was coming across, then you was in our territory.
Right.
Because that was the boundary line, right there, Hunting Park, out where Allegheny and Henry Avenue. And Ridge, and going down to Ridge Avenue, all that meets right there. That was our boundary line right there. So that's where that mentality started too, as far as getting involved with criminal activity and stuff. So taking that to another level led me to prison, because like we say in circles, stand-up guy, and would never, turn their friends in and that kind of stuff. That was me, right? I believed in that stuff. Going to prison, I took a little, like I said, a little status inside the prison, so I never had a problem. I found myself in prison resolving a lot of conflict. So, I have skills that when I came out of prison in '96, I was able to transfer them to the streets and use those same skills helping instead of hurting the community. And so that took me up to where I'm at now. And I met Mike when he came into O.G. Law. Oh, okay. When I came up Albion to speak to the inmate population. About
is that how you first met?
That's how we first met. And when he heard we was coming up there, he had a whole lot of things that he had put together himself while he was in prison that he wanted to do when he came out. And he came down to the chapel where we had the presentation at, and he sat on the front row with all his drawings, all his sayings, his songs, and he had a whole lot of stuff. I mean, he was like a one-man shop right there. And he was we had a really, what we call that, we talking intimate conversation about, and he was probably the only one in there that was like, really knew what he wanted to do when he got out. And I seen the commitment and the desire that he had a lot going on for himself, and that he was going to come out and do the right thing. So when he did get out, we did link up.
Yeah. How many years ago was that, yourself?
Back in 05.
05. Oh yeah, 05. Yep.
So you've been working outside, trying to help individuals to offset them possibly going to prison.
Yeah. See what, and I believe that society really understands this. But like I said about the 13th Amendment, that word slavery and that word involuntary servitude means it has always been a money-making business for somebody. The bottom line is somebody's kids go to college off of somebody's kid going to prison.
Oh,
right.
You understand? So until we really deal with that issue of really realizing that, yeah, you got some people in power that want prison to stop, but then you got other people who realize that it's a business, just like crack. If you took crack out of the black community, because the statistics show that crime has actually went down.
Right.
When you're talking burglaries and earring snatching, pocketbook, car theft, robbery, because those people started selling drugs. Now, for over 20 years, they've been selling this drug. Now, grandma's bills get paid from crack. Now, some of your best athletes, they can't tell you, but I'm going to tell you, as a drug dealer, we paid for certain people that made it to the Olympics, but they got their training through drug money because they wasn't working. And somebody, a drug dealer, well, the old school drug dealers, we used to always tell the kids to go to school. It's a new breed out there now. And that's why the old breed is coming back out. But my whole point is that once this money becomes part of the fabric of society, If you pull that thread out, it'd be the same way if I pull a thread out your sweater. Eventually, it's all gonna fall apart. That's how intricate drug money has been allowed to become in society. It's so powerful that you got the lawyer get paid off the drug money, grandma bills get paid off drug money, the persons who own the real estate in the community, a lot of times it's drug money. The prison phone system get paid off of drug money. Commissary get bought with drug money. It's drug money is everywhere. Like, if we're gonna act like we're gonna fix the problem, we gotta really deal with and be honest with the issues, man. Because they know that if they put millions of dollars in one addict helping another addict to stop getting high, one alcoholic stopping another alcoholic from drinking, ain't it common sense that tell you one ex-convict can help a potential convict to stop committing crime? We are that living story. He took me out and put me on Ridge Avenue and let me perform, which enabled me to sell my CDs. He took me to places to speak that I wouldn't have never been able to get in by myself. And when we spoke, the people understood it because we lived it. We not over here in Lower Marion in some mansion deciding the fate of individuals that you can't even really communicate with. You never been in a crack house. And I'm gonna tell you something, the sad part about it is sometimes crackheads treat you better than the people who act like they supposed to be somebody. Every time I go visit somebody that's a crackhead, they offer me some Silver Thunder. You go in City Hall sometimes, they don't even offer you a drink of water. God knows.
There surely is a lot. There is surely a lot to be said for the whole, what we call the self-help movement. You know, the movement where people who have life experiences are very, very helpful in facilitating changes in other people. I mean, there's no question about that. But it sounds like, do you think that there are people who are not necessarily have to have a criminal background, or in some cases, as we sometimes refer to it, not necessarily be in recovery, that also can be contributors and helpful to the movement in the sense of what we're trying to do?
We call them allies.
Allies.
Yeah, we call them allies.
Exactly, because when the five fingers ball up into a fist, only then can we truly fight this war against crime and drugs. But the twist is, the ex-convict has to be respected, and that's the problem. There is no respect for the ex-convict. Now, even though God, you look at God in the Bible, you take Joseph, he was an ex-convict. Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, ex-convict. Daniel in the lion's den, ex-convict. John the Baptist, ex-convict. Jesus was a convict that never got out. They murdered him. Saul, ex-convict. So God can use ex-convicts for work.
Yeah, well, I
But
totally
people
agree
from
with
God,
you.
they act. The people of God act like they can't. I mean, it's important that we acknowledge this though, because if you're going to say, "And forgive us our trespasses as we forgive
those
our
who trespass against us."
So what are you saying? You're saying that God, I done sinned against you so many times that I'm willing to give somebody else forgiveness for that which I ask from you. So what if God gave you a half of forgiveness? It would be like, okay, now I'm going to give you a half a breath. Now everybody got asthma, because he who is without sin, let him cast the first stone. Or I'm going to give you a half a heartbeat. Now you're in the hospital. So you give ex-convicts a half a chance. You say you forgiven, you say once you pay for your crime, but you still doing time on the street.
I know you are. Yeah, my point was, look, I totally agree with you in a lot of cases. My point was just that, yes, there's a need to integrate more of the experiences that people have had in prison life. And that somehow has to be married with other, I guess, community people who could help you move in other areas.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think that's the point that I was only making.
Go ahead, Mark.
Actually, two things. One, I wanted to bring up the point that there are many ex-offenders who come out and do the right thing. For myself, I came to community college 2 months after I was released, after I was able to cross the street, because we bring baggage home with us, probably trauma.
Definitely trauma.
But as soon as I was able to cross the street, this was the place that I came. I ended up graduating with highest honors, 2 degrees from here, and went on to get higher education. So people think about ex-offenders as those people just getting out of prison. What made me go back to school was livable wage. You know, they constantly tell you, we're going to get you a job with livable wage. and we have to be excited about $10 an hour. Well, if you have 2 children and yourself to take care of and maybe some
$10.
fines left over, $10 an hour,
Not going to do it.
that's not a livable wage for me. But we still have the stigma. Even though I have 5 degrees now, certifications, I have to check the box.
I know.
And when I check the box, I can see them target the box. We go through my education, my experience, and then we get back to the box.
They get a copy of your rap sheet.
Yes.
And they want to ask you all kinds of questions. I mean, but that's the issue you bring up is an issue that is particularly problematic in many people coming out of prison and trying to make a new life for themselves.
Yes.
In the sense of the re-entry issue. And what happens is that everyone says, let's let them in.
Yes.
But in reality, they get very, very upset at your criminal record, even though you did your time.
Yes.
And you know you're a new person now, and supposedly you should be able to move forward. But I totally agree with you. I've seen it happen frequently, in which people were the stigma of incarceration has hurt them dramatically.
Yes.
In the community, in the sense of jobs and stuff like that. Not here at community, as you know,
No.
and not in some of the colleges. Actually, some of the colleges, without mentioning any, are very, very concerned about the incarcerated person coming into their institutions.
Good point, because actually when I was going to leave community, we have
Yeah,
the
don't
core.
mention where the college is.
I'm
you
not.
know.
We have the core-to-core program, but one of the colleges that I was highly eligible to get a good scholarship, 80% I think, but they had the box. And I didn't want to check the box because I didn't understand what that had to do with me getting an education. So I
And
just
tell them
opted
what the box is, because I know the form.
The box is, are you convicted? Have you ever been convicted of a crime? Now, sometimes the box says, have you ever been convicted of the crime? Or sometimes it says in the last 5 years, which is a better box because then I don't have to check it. But there's always a box.
But there's also another box that says, have you ever been arrested and convicted
Okay.
of a crime? And that's a more vicious box because that way they can track your arrest. They want to
right.
know, they can discriminate more
yeah.
because you've been arrested. And then they have boxes that say, have you ever been, they'll say exclude DUIs, child support, or those kind of things, but they want to know actually if you have any criminal background. Any kind of contact with the police, that's criminal. So that is a problem for anybody coming out of prison. If you have somebody that was in work, and nobody, the employer has to realize that if you're in prison, that's where you're at, right? Because a lot of times people come home and they give a resume, there's a void between years, and they want to know, well, where was you at between those 20 years, or whatever? And people are so afraid of revealing the fact that they were in prison that's going to hinder them from getting the job.
That's right.
That they don't tell you, or they'll check no on the box and lie about it to come back and haunt them later.
And then 6 months when they're in the job and they
Right.
find out that they had a criminal history, they then say, you lied on your application.
Right.
This I've seen.
Well, but you know what happens is with the ex-convict that lies, it's kind of like trying to do the wrong thing for the right reason.
That's right.
What they saying is, I know you're going to find out because I know you're going to search. But let me show you my performance for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe you'll kind of look over it. You're hoping for the kindness of the people, for the forgiveness aspect to kick in. Maybe I could show them I'm a good person. I work twice as hard.
Yeah.
You know, you got ex-convicts that go to a job site and tell them, listen, you ain't even got to pay me for a week. Just give me a shot.
Yeah.
And if you don't like me, don't hire me. But if I do good, just give me a chance. See, the bottom line is people act like it's a big deal that you've been convicted, but the bottom line is it's a whole lot of people that ain't been convicted that done worse crimes that's working in your office right next to you right now. Mm-hmm. But when they do good work, you don't worry about them molesting their daughter at home or whatever they got going on back at the crib. As long as you do your work, we cool. You don't do your work, you get fired. So you hire an ex-convict, he do the work, you keep him. He mess up, fire him. It's really that simple. It's really a forgiveness issue. But my point is to take this to the DOC perspective.
The Department of
Department of Corrections. That's the key word. They don't just have a room of corrections. These people got a department of corrections. Mm-hmm. That means you got a bunch of different things happening to correct these inmates. Now, society is paying tax dollars, plenty of them, billions from what you just said.
Right.
Record numbers in billion. 81 was it? Billion? Something like
It's
that? 51 billion? 51.7 billion to correct.
In your experiences in the prison life that you've had, did you feel that they were helpful to you, that you got rehabilitated while you were in prison?
No, the first time I experienced, I didn't even know what racism was until I went to prison, first of all.
Okay, so you actually felt racism
For the first time.
first time when you were incarcerated. And how did that show itself?
They'll spit tobacco in your food. They'll call you a nigga, and then if you look at them crazy, write you up for reckless eyeballing, send you to the hole for looking at them after they called you a nigga. Like, just they'll say, "Come on, hit me. Come on, you tough. Come on, tough guy, hit me." And you might say something like, "I ain't gonna hit you, but if we was on the streets and I put my hands on you," and they'll say, "You threatened me. 45 days. Whoop, send you to the hole." Just a bunch of games.
Did you participate in a lot of different programs to help get you to a better place, so that when you at least left the prison, you felt that you gained skills from being in the prison?
When you study the programs in prison, what you gotta understand is most of the books is 10, 15, 20 years behind in curriculum, first of all. The computer systems that they use in prison is not up to date. Everything is old. So when you get there, this is why they always gotta have training programs when you come home. Because the training programs in prison ain't work. It's like they got a new program called RISE. That's a good program, I believe.
And what does that mean?
Right, I don't know. It's just a new program.
It's the reintegration office for the mayor's office.
Mayor's
Called
office.
RISE.
This is where some of the faith-based initiatives are, I assume.
Right,
But my
part
thing
of
is,
it. Right.
if you got somebody locked up for 5 years, how come RISE ain't in the prison? What they know is somebody's not correcting somebody in prison, even though they the Department of Correction. So you got to come out here and get retrained again just to try to keep up and get on the same level.
Right.
So
your experience, your personal experiences.
I don't have a job. How you think I'm able to
prisons.
stay in the jail cell on Hunting Park Ave talking to the kids for 24 days straight?
Oh, okay.
Because I don't have an employer.
And you believe that you didn't pick up any skills in the sense of when you were in the prison?
You know what prison helps people do?
What's that?
It's not because you got ex-convicts or formerly incarcerated or whatever fly title they want to create to describe being in prison. But they come out and they say things like, "I can't lie, man, being in jail helped me," which gives the impression that they needed to be in prison to learn. That's not the case. It's not the jail that helped you. It's you finally slowed down and just had time to use your brain that you didn't think you had before.
Well, there is a lot to that thought that when we to take individuals who have been on the street doing, let's say, a lot of drugs, and we put them in a facility, and they clean up, so to speak, their mind gets clearer. So they might think that something serious is positively happening to them, but again, it's just what you're saying. It's the fact that they're just time and they're getting
down.
clean. Well, has your experiences been any different in being in?
The prison makes an attempt
Right.
to do something about that by letting people from the outside come into the prison.
Right.
Right, and that's usually through faith-based.
That's right. The
Right,
faith-based
faith-based.
initiatives.
But what we propose, as people that have been in prison and have made some corrections in ourselves, is that you have the whole learning process, rehabilitation process inside prison be ran by community-based organizations inside the prison.
Exactly.
And the DOC have nothing to do with the
Ex-convicts.
rehabilitation process, because the people leaving prison is going to come back to the community.
That's right.
Right, they're not going to they're not going places where the DOC you would think they would go. They're going right back where they did their crimes at. So the community has a stake in that. So they should be able to help mold that person while they're inside the prison. So that's what we propose. But there's always, and that might mean people that have been in prison coming back into prison to help.
And that
them.
is a particular problem because they're
That's
then
right.
associating with, quote, people who are in prison and they're on parole, and et cetera, and that creates a different kind of.
Right. We found ways to actually get around that.
How did you do that?
Well, it's the same concept as the rooms of recovery.
Okay.
It's the same way if we have a room of people that have been in prison and people that running and the groups have been in prison as well. You know, the feedback came for a lot of stuff changing? Victims. victims said, wait
Yeah.
a minute, my son is murdered in the grave, and you mean to tell me that they can go to college and all this kind of
That's
stuff?
right. Yeah, I think that's
And
where that came from.
that fueled a lot of the apathy about an inmate getting help,
Mhm.
the victims.
Yeah.
And that's why in Pennsylvania, they have a victim advocate that sits, I know her name
Right.
Mary's Achilles, for the state, that is an advocate for the victims. And that is a legitimate concern.
Yes.
I mean, a victim should have input, but also they have the restorative practices,
Restorative justice. Yes.
that brings the victim, a mediator, and the
That's right,
perpetrator
together to talk.
so that you can calm that down and really give the victim a sense of redemption for the person.
Can I ask a question here though?
Sure.
Sure.
Victim. I've been a victim. And a lot of times when you're a victim, you're bitter.
Mm-hmm.
Can you make a good decision if you're bitter? If a doctor's in the hospital and their child comes in, they won't allow the doctor to operate on their own child because of the emotional aspect. Why would you allow the victim to prescribe what's best for them? What the victim don't understand, and I'm not, because like I said, I've perpetrated, but I've been a victim. I've been kidnapped, beat my arms with hammers, and I ain't tell.
Mm-hmm.
I rolled out. I took that on the chin because it's part of the game, but I've been a victim. But so I understand the bitterness. And when you bitter, you don't make healthy decisions a lot of times. What the victims don't realize is 85% of the people who made you a victim is going to move next door to you again in a few years.
Yeah, but
so what you, let me finish. So what you need to ask yourself is, what type of person do you want to move next door to you? Victim. Straight up.
Mm-hmm. But in Pennsylvania, the victim's advocate carries a lot of weight in any decision. Parole decision, a lot, and even though what O.G. Law is saying, it makes a lot of sense. Coming from the perspective of somebody like us, that we all been victims of something, and we forgave people.
Yeah, I'm not just a convict.
Right, that's
Yeah.
right. We just an ex-convict.
But
Right.
I think
son, a brother,
I think
a father.
Yeah, and you're all those things, and they get ignored. I mean, I do agree with you that they do get ignored. But the point is, the whole concept of victimization, I thought the idea was to try and get you past the concept. In other words, get past being a victim, because what happens is it haunts you for the rest of your life, and you can't be a productive person if you just always feel that you're being victimized. I thought that was what was behind some of that story. That's what they were trying to do. Now, I'm not saying they're doing it very successfully, but I think the concept was to get past what happened so that you can put your life back together. Just like many people who are coming out of prison are trying to get past, the trauma of imprisonment,
but
and get it past that.
That was the original concept
Yeah.
of prisons by the Quakers and the Puritans.
Yeah.
When they came over here with the prison penal system, the whole concept was to remove you from the community where you did your offense, put you up for a little while,
and keep you in silence, if you remember.
Right, and keep you in silence. And
Yeah,
then
penance,
once you
to do
breathe-
penance.
Right, to do penance.
That's it.
And that whole process, if you had a victim to your crime, they were a part of that process.
Right.
And then when the victim had input and they felt comfortable and everybody in agreement, then you come back out and then you do things with the victim to penance, like you said, to give them back, restore back their confidence.
And on their
in
side
you.
of the equation is the whole concept, at least as we know in the Christian faith and other faiths, Islamic faith, etc. The concept of forgiveness is a very, very powerful tool.
Right.
That in order for us to move forward, we have to learn how to accept and move or forgive.
It's even deeper than that. The book actually say, do not judge, because the same judgment that you give on somebody else is going to be given to you. This is why it says that the righteous will scarcely make an end. Jesus said, you didn't come visit me when I was in prison. Therefore, when you come to my Father's house, I will say, I never knew you. This is God talking. Because I'm tired of y'all human beings that I've been forgiven for all these millions of years. And you can't forgive your brother for that little offense? I know what you did, judge. I know what you did, lawyer. Even when I'm police officer, I know what you're doing that nobody else don't know about. Yeah. And I forgive you every day. Now you're going to come up here and act self-righteous like you can't forgive nobody else?
But, O.G. Law, let me ask you a question. You don't seem like you're, like, forgiving a lot of people. You still come across really, really, really angry.
If I wouldn't have forgave a lot of people, I wouldn't be able to sit in this studio right now because I'll still be incarcerated for a parole violation.
So you are at least a little better on the forgiveness than you were in the past.
Here's the twist. The Bible says, be angry, but sin not. See, Jesus went in there and turned the temple, the money changers over in the temple. He was angry because they was hustling God. But what I do with my anger is I climb in a jail cell and I snatch $33,000 out their mouth every time I convince a baby not to go to jail. That's how you strategically. Because, man, we talked about in the beginning. For every somebody's kid is going to college, or for somebody else's kid going to prison. When you in the neighborhood looking at third graders to decide how many prisons you're going to build, somebody kid is in the daycare center looking all cute, and somebody else driving past looking at paperwork saying, oh, he don't have a father, no education. Oh, he skipped school. He probably can't work well. All right, that's one. Check. Put that on our list. Build 3 more prisons because these guys will probably be coming. This is how they looking at kids. Sure. We got to keep it real. So if that don't make you angry,
I can appreciate it.
You know what I'm saying? And see, I understand now that vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. But you wonder why society's so messed up. Let me ask you an honest question. All these people who ain't forgiven, that sit up in their offices without dealing with the ex-convicts and the real street people from a one-on-one perspective. Look at all the ideas they've been doing in the last 20 years to stop violence in school. Why are the kids that you trying to help bullying y'all, making y'all stay in the house? You can't even come outside your crib no more and you're scared to send your kid to school. So if what you was doing was working and it was right and God had his hands on it, then why ain't it working?
Well, it is not working. That's partly why we're here today, to talk about how maybe we could turn it a little bit on the right side.
So now ask yourself, how did he help me stay out of trouble?
Well, we have to take that message.
What do we have in common that is actually working with us being respected enough to be in community college, and I have no college education? Why am I here? Because this ex-convict reached back the same way an addict reaches back and pulls the one out the crack house. If you invest some time and some money in that, guess what? You give an ex-convict a job, you drop the crime rate. Miss Suzette that paid for our house for 40 years could come back outside. Your kid could go to school and get a real education, because instead of spending money on prisons, maybe you could buy some new books and put them in Gratz and let Gratz, which looks like a penitentiary, be like the school in Lower Marion that looks like a college when they in elementary school. But you ain't but you ain't making that type of investment in the city schools.
But let me ask you, when you listen to O.G. Law talk, what runs through your mind?
Well, you know what? He's on point.
Both of you.
He's on point 100%.
Okay.
Right. See, people know in corrections and law enforcement and public safety that if you put that connection that he just told you.
And how do you interpret it when you
in a mass situation?
Right. When you rephrase his connection, how do you express it?
Oh, I express it. I got actual proven data.
Okay.
That what he said. We went into school that had 90% incident reports every day. When we came into school, formerly ex-cons working in the hallways as monitors, it dropped to 40% overnight. So that's how they do statistics when they want to go in front of the cameras. They want to show immediate drop in crime. So we had an immediate drop in crime at A to P Lewis School, right? Okay. And then the report went to the community. Then the crime in the community around that school dropped. So that's immediate. That's statistics that proved it. That we have that connection.
Oh, I think it's I totally agree with you. It's a powerful message.
But listen. There's an alter to that. Some people don't want that to happen, because people that are in position in the criminal justice system, they want to have their job. They want to have a job. They don't want to. If crime drops, they don't feel as though they're going to lose their job. Point in reference. They said they're not going to build a prison in Fayette County, a state prison. This was in the newspaper a couple weeks ago. The state legislature for Fayette County said that's a terrible decision. I promised my constituents 675 jobs at the prison.
Oh, okay.
Right? Now, where are they going to work now? And he said, plus the people coming here ain't from here. They're going to go to prison.
Look at the areas that the prison is built, man. Half of them, all they got is a Walmart and a McDonald's. That's it.
But when you build a prison, they have hotels set up. You have all kind of businesses come.
Sure.
Right? All you have to do is drive I-76 from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh, and you go past Somerset and all them count. You see that.
Internet. I love to get you a couple words in here. These two guys here talk. You know.
Well, when I was listening, I just thought about rehabilitation. My rehabilitation happened probably in the first 24 hours of being processed into prison. I often tell people when they were processing me in, I was processing myself out. I started reading everything that was available, you know, and I knew that was enough for me right then. I had 4 years to do, but my process happened in the first 24 hours. I knew that was not a place I wanted to go again. And my business for the next 4 years was figuring out what I was going to do to prevent that from happening. That's why I ended up at community college 2 months after my release. And I've been in school ever since. Sometimes I go to 2 schools at a time. And then after getting out there, I met my husband looking for a job after I graduated from community. I had an interview through the job fair, and the gentleman that interviewed me said, "How do I know that you won't commit another crime?" I said, "Because I just spent 2 years, I was homeless while I was going to school here, and I kept going every day." One of my teachers said, "Why didn't you tell somebody?" I said, "I felt like it was just part of my journey, that was something I was supposed to experience." Oddly enough, I work with women in recovery who are homeless now, so I understand. And that's what I'm saying about all 3 of us. We understand these people. You know, and I'm not saying that other people can't join, because people help me that have never been inside of a prison.
I agree.
Allies, as they were.
Yes.
Allies.
And I didn't come in wearing a badge of honor. I was actually ashamed. I came in very quietly. My vision is terrible now, because I used to sit in the computer lab here 5 hours straight trying to do papers. Sometimes I would lose the whole paper, 10 pages, and have to start over. But I didn't want to tell anybody I didn't know how to operate a computer, because I thought they're going to start asking questions and I'm going to have to tell somebody I just got out of prison. So I kept it quiet and I learned. But I understand that there are other people in those same shoes that made that change in 24 hours. They're going to do a length of time. They're going to come home and they're going to need help. And they need to talk to people like us, because shame is something else. Tears you up. And it causes you to not do a whole lot of things that you can do. The badge of honor in prison is having a high school diploma. And that's the one thing that I did go in with. I could read and I had a high school diploma. I was amazed that there's so many women that had to sign their name with an X to do commissary. So the people who knew how to write took advantage of them. They checked all kind of stuff on the commissary list, and when the bag came back, more of the bag belonged to them, those who could fill it out and read it, than the person who was paying for it. They had money though. So that's a badge of honor, just having a high school diploma. So I started out different than a lot of people. I understand that. And the one thing I would plug is come to community college. I'm not saying that because I'm at community college. I believe in this school. And that's long before the Inside Out program. You know, it's just good teachers here that help out. Education is the way. I'm underemployed now, considering the education that I have now and life experience. But I'm able to do okay even being underemployed. Education is freedom. It is.
Well, I mean, that's a wonderful way to end this, because we've kind of spent almost an hour with each other. First of all, I want to thank all of you. You've been very, very helpful in giving us some insight as to what's going on inside, and actually your concerns outside. And I will say to the 3 of you that there are many, many, many of us who have a history of incarceration that really see ourselves as allies in the fight. And I think it's a wonderful fight, and I hope we do win it. So I want to thank all of you. You're very appreciative of putting your time in.
All right, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for today's episode of the Tapestry of Life. Thanks for watching us on CCP TV. If you would like more information about the programs offered by the Department of Behavioral Health and Human Services here at Community College of Philadelphia, go to our website at www.ccp.edu. I'm Pascal Scoles. See you next time.